Gaetano Donizetti's Lucia di Lammermoor has the reputation of being the classic singer's opera. The idea that what is too extreme or too glorious or too passionate or too hateful to speak, one can only sing about. I think it's particularly true when we deal with this most well-known section of the opera, Lucia's mad scene. And the concept of insanity or of madness that is being shown here, it's so well observed, years before Freud, years before all the studying. It has a lot to do, I think, with aural hallucinations. Donizetti struggled with the idea of how do I get the sound of the music in Lucia's head out to the audience. He originally wrote it for the newly invented instrument at the time, the glass harmonica, which America's Benjamin Franklin invented, I guess, between signing the Declaration of Independence and discovering electricity. He found time to play with wine glasses and discover that a moist finger in a wine glass filled with various different amounts of wine could produce all sorts of different pitches. This became the principle on which the glass harmonica functioned. Before the premiere, Donizetti crossed out, in the manuscript score, crossed out the glass harmonica part and rewrote it for a flute, whether owing to practicality or an artistic revision, I'm not sure. But this notion of the flute and the soprano's alter ego being this other high disembodied instrument. Very many composers used flute and soprano combinations, but very few others to greater psychologically realistic effect. There's a tradition, actually not written by Donizetti, that at the climax of the mad scene, the orchestra drops out, rather than her simply singing the usual 2 or 3 measure cadenza by herself, she lets loose in tandem with the flute in a very traditionally worked out over many years cadenza where the flute and she are partnering in close harmony. Sometimes she's singing higher than the flute, sometimes the flute's playing higher than her. And what this can mean varies very much from production to production. I don't want to give much away because Angelo Gobbato has created an extraordinary physical manifestation of what this cadenza, this musical cadenza, is all about. And it does have an almost improvised feel as it follows the states of mind that Lucia is drifting through. Madness, as we see it on the street or on the news, is a terrifying thing. But how beautifully and harmoniously it's expressed in Lucia di Lammermoor, I think, gets back to that issue that singing and these beautiful melodies ennobles and transfigures whatever the emotion we're feeling. Jealousy by itself is not a particularly attractive emotion, but when Edgardo thinks he's been betrayed and in a jealous rage curses the entire Ashton clan, it's an unbelievably exciting, thrilling scene. I don't think many of us would cheer if we saw someone on the taxi or on the train berating his fiancée that way. But you put the right music to it, and in spite of yourself, with a thrilling performance like I think we're going to get from Given Cozy, in spite of yourself, you find yourself rooting, cheering on his cursing of her, and then feeling for her. Done properly, Lucia di Lammermoor really whips you up into this excitement. I think there's a few other operas that do it, Trovatore as well. These early mid-19th century operas, where opera was such a popular art form and was so much being intended, not for the snobs or the toffs or whatever word you want to use, but it was so much intended to be partaken of by anyone who could buy a ticket and anyone who could get themselves to the theater. And you heard the music, I think, in those days on the streets. There's that famous story of Donizetti's slightly elder colleague, Verdi, suppressing the music to La Donna Immobile of Rigoletto because he didn't want the gondoliers to start singing it before the opening. It was in Venice, the premiere, and he didn't want the tune to leak out beforehand. One of the great tasks in doing a piece like Lucia is imagining how can we recreate that excitement? How can we have this sense that until you've heard it with us, you've not heard it? I think all great artists in this role, notably one thinks of Maria Callas and Renata Scotto, have the capacity to make you hear the music anew. And the joy of working with Bronwyn Forbet, our Lucia, has been how can we create this on a logical level so that it doesn't feel like we're repeating something from 1835, but instead like we're getting in touch with and communicating with something from 1835 to bring it to our own day, to our own ears, in a way that will make it a new experience for everyone in the room.